The rain poured down in thick, relentless sheets, drumming against the sleek glass windows of one of the tallest skyscrapers in the city. Inside, Nathan Steele sat in his plush, minimalist office, his fingers drumming absently on the polished, mahogany desk. He had built an empire from the ground up, SteeleTech, the tech giant that revolutionized everything from AI to smart homes. Billionaire at 33, a genius in business, and yet something felt off. Success had given him everything, except for the one thing money couldn't buy. Lately, he had grown restless, tired of board meetings filled with polished smiles and rehearsed pleasantries. He wanted to see his company from the ground level, through the eyes of those who worked tirelessly to keep it running. That's when the idea struck him. What if he went undercover as an intern? Not as Nathan Steele, the billionaire CEO, but as Nate Carter, just another name on the company roster. His assistant, Jordan, had nearly choked on his coffee when Nathan proposed the idea. You want to pretend to be an intern? At your own company? Jordan's eyes flickered with a mix of disbelief and concern. Nathan, you don't even know how to make coffee. They're going to figure you out in a day. Nathan smirked. Guess I better learn. A week later, dressed in jeans and a hoodie, an outfit he hadn't worn since his college days, Nathan walked through the doors of SteeleTech's bustling corporate office, blending in with the morning rush. No chauffeur, no private elevator, just him, stepping into a world that was supposed to be his, yet suddenly felt so foreign. And that's when he saw her, Leah Carter. Her dark curls were pulled into a messy bun, and her sharp brown eyes were locked on the computer screen in front of her. She was talking to a coworker, her voice carrying a quiet intensity. You know how much Steele's net worth is? Over $70 billion. And we get what? A 2% salary increase? Meanwhile, they spend millions on another stupid AI project that'll probably replace half of us. Nathan stopped mid-step, nearly colliding with another intern. Interesting. He had expected to go unnoticed, to observe from the shadows. But Leah, she was different. She didn't worship him like the others, didn't sing praises about his vision or brilliance. She didn't even know he was standing a few feet away, and yet her words hit him harder than any business deal ever had. For the first time in years, Nathan Steele felt something unexpected. Curiosity, and maybe, just maybe, something more. But there was one problem. If Leah ever found out who he really was, she'd hate him. And yet, as the day went on and he watched her work, saw her passion, her fire, the way she fought for people who didn't even realize they needed fighting for, Nathan realized he couldn't just walk away. This was going to be a lot more complicated than he had planned. Nathan quickly learned that being an intern was harder than he expected. He was used to running board meetings, making billion-dollar decisions, and seeing his ideas turn into reality within days. But here, in the crowded open office space of SteeleTech's development floor, he was just another nameless face, struggling to keep up. His first task, fetching coffee. He had never made a cup in his life, and when he fumbled with the office coffee machine, pressing random buttons in frustration, Leah walked by, shaking her head with a smirk. Wow, first day? She asked, crossing her arms. Nathan looked up, trying to act clueless. That obvious, she laughed. You're staring at that thing like it just insulted your whole family. Here, let me. Leah pushed past him, flipping the switch with ease, pouring the coffee like she'd done it 1,000,000 times before. There was something about the way she moved. Effortless, confident, completely unaware that the man standing next to her was the reason she had a job in the first place. Nathan took the cup she handed him, their fingers brushing for half a second. Thanks, he said. Try not to spill it. she teased, already walking away. He watched her go, the scent of coffee and vanilla lingering in the air. He had never been challenged like this before. No one spoke to him this way. No one looked at him like he was just another guy trying to survive the workday, and he liked it. Over the next few weeks, he kept his cover, working late, sitting in on meetings, listening to employees complain about SteeleTech's policies. He saw firsthand how the pressure trickled down, how deadlines crushed creativity, how people like Leah worked overtime just to make ends meet. It was a side of his company he had never truly understood, and it unsettled him. But the more time he spent around Leah, the more dangerous his secret became. She wasn't just smart, she was fiercely loyal to her co-workers, unafraid to speak her mind, even when it meant criticizing the very company that paid her bills. She had no idea that the man she rolled her eyes at in meetings, the one she called some clueless but kind of adorable, was the same billionaire she blamed for everything wrong in the industry. And Nathan? He was falling for her. It wasn't supposed to happen. This was supposed to be a simple experiment, an undercover mission to understand his own company better. But now, every stolen glance, every shared joke by the coffee machine, every late-night brainstorming session where she forgot to hate the corporate machine and just talked about her dreams, it all made it harder for him to tell her the truth. And then, everything started falling apart. One afternoon, Leah stormed into the break room, her face red with frustration. "Did you hear?" she asked her co-workers. "They're cutting funding for employee bonuses again. But guess what? Steele himself just approved a $50 million expansion for the AI division. Because, why invest in people when you can replace them instead?" Nathan froze, his stomach twisting. She wasn't wrong. He had approved that budget before going undercover, thinking only of innovation and progress. But now he saw what it meant for the people actually doing the work. And then Leah turned to him, eyes burning with the same fire that had drawn him to her from the start. "What do you think, Nate?" she asked. "You're new here, but do you really think it's fair that the people breaking their backs for this company get ignored while the higher-ups throw money at projects that don't even help us?" He swallowed hard. Every instinct told him to defend himself, to explain the business strategy behind it. But he wasn't Nathan Steele right now. He was just Nate. So he took a deep breath and said, "No, it's not fair." Leah blinked, surprised by his honesty. Then she nodded, as if he had passed some kind of unspoken test. "Glad someone gets it," she muttered. But the moment stuck with him. Because for the first time, Nathan didn't just see Leah as an employee. He saw her as a person. A person whose life was directly affected by the choices he made in boardrooms, miles above the very people who made his company run. And the worst part? He didn't know how to fix it. Days passed, and his internal struggle grew. His feelings for Leah deepened, but so did his guilt. She trusted him now, confided in him about her dreams of one day leading her own tech team, of building something that actually mattered, and all the while, he was lying to her. Then came the day everything unraveled. A senior manager burst into the development floor, looking for Leah. "Leah Carter," he called out, waving a piece of paper. "Congrats! Your department's been selected for direct evaluation by, get this, Nathan Steele himself. CEO's coming down next week." The room buzzed with excitement and panic. People scrambled to prepare, whispering about what this could mean for their future. But Leah? She scoffed. "Great," she muttered under her breath. "The billionaire who doesn't even know we exist is suddenly interested in us. Can't wait to hear him talk about opportunities." While he sits in his $1 million chair, Nathan's heart pounded. This was it. He had to tell her the truth. Because next week, when he walked into this room as himself, Nathan Steele, the billionaire she despised, he would see it in her eyes. She would hate him. And the worst part, he wouldn't blame her. Nathan barely slept that night. The weight of his secret was crushing him now, every passing second, making it harder to face Leah. He had convinced himself that he could keep this up a little longer, that maybe there was a way to make things right before she found out. But now there was no time left. By next week, when he walked into the office as Nathan Steele, CEO of SteeleTech, everything would change. And the one person who had made him feel more human than he had in years, the one person who had seen him as more than his wealth, would never look at him the same way again. The next few days were torture. Leah was still talking to him, still laughing with him over terrible cafeteria food, still rolling her eyes at company policies that, unbeknownst to her, he had created. He wanted to tell her the truth every time they spoke, but every time, the words got stuck in his throat, and then the day arrived. Nathan didn't take the private elevator. He didn't walk in with a team of assistants or security guards. He stepped onto the development floor alone, dressed in the sharp suit he had spent weeks avoiding. The murmurs started instantly. Employees sat up straighter. Some whispered excitedly. Others looked nervous. And then there was Leah. She was standing by the coffee machine, the same spot where they'd first talked. She hadn't noticed him yet, too focused on fixing her drink. For half a second, he let himself think that maybe, just maybe, there was a way out of this that wouldn't end in disaster. Then she turned around. The moment her eyes landed on him, her expression shifted. Confusion first, then realization, then betrayal. Nathan opened his mouth, but Leah was already stepping forward, her face unreadable. "Nate?" Her voice was quiet. He hesitated. "Leah, She let out a breathless laugh, but there was no humor in it. "Oh my God." She looked around as if expecting someone to jump out and tell her this was some kind of cruel joke. "You're him?" He had never felt smaller in his life. "Leah, I wanted to tell you." She shook her head, her hands balling into fists. "You lied to me." The whole floor had gone silent. Everyone was watching, but Nathan didn't care about them. He only cared about the woman in front of him, the one who had trusted him, who had let him into her world, who had spoken the truth to him, because she had no idea who he really was. "Please," he said, voice lower now. "Just hear me out." Leah's jaw clenched. "You sat there and listened to me talk about how unfair this company is. You agreed with me, and the whole time, you were the reason for all of it." He shook his head. "I didn't. It's not that simple. I went undercover to understand what was really happening here. And I see it now, Leah. I see you. Don't," she snapped, her voice tight. "Don't act like this is some noble thing you did. You had the power to fix everything from the start, but instead, you played pretend while the rest of us struggled." Nathan had prepared for this reaction. He knew it was coming, but it still hit harder than he expected. "I know I messed up," he admitted, "but I do want to fix this." He took a small step closer, lowering his voice. "And I don't just mean the company." For a second, something flickered in Leah's eyes. But just as quickly, it was gone. She let out a sharp exhale and shook her head. "I can't do this." She turned and walked away. Nathan wanted to go after her, but he knew he had lost that right. The meeting went on without him. He didn't care. He barely registered the presentations, the numbers, the plans his executives threw at him. The only thing that mattered now was the fact that the one person he had wanted to prove himself to, the one person who had made him see his company differently, wanted nothing to do with him. For the next few days, Leah avoided him. He couldn't blame her, but he also couldn't let things end like this, so he did something no one expected. At the next company-wide meeting, instead of giving the usual corporate speech, Nathan stood in front of his employees and did what no CEO ever did. Admitted he was wrong. He told them what he had seen, what he had learned. He acknowledged the flaws in the company, the long hours, the lack of support, the broken system. He promised changes, real ones, not just surface-level fixes, but policies that would actually make a difference. The room was quiet when he finished. Then, slowly, people started clapping. Not everyone trusted him yet. He knew that. It would take time. But he meant every word. And Leah? She watched from the back of the room, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. She didn't clap. She didn't smile. But she stayed until the very end. That night, Nathan found her on the rooftop, the city lights stretching endlessly beyond them. I meant everything I said, he told her. Not just about the company, about you. Leah turned to face him, studying him carefully. I don't know if I can forgive you, Nathan. His chest tightened. I know, she sighed, rubbing her temples. You lied to me, and I don't trust you. He nodded. Then let me earn it. She looked at him for a long time, as if searching for something. Then finally, she let out a quiet laugh. You're really not going to give up, are you? He smiled. Not a chance. Leah shook her head, but this time, there was the tiniest hint of a smirk. You're impossible. Nathan took that as a good sign. It would take time. He knew that. But for the first time in a long time, he wasn't thinking about profits, or innovation, or market shares. He was thinking about her, and for once, that was enough.